All right. All right. Welcome back. This is a commentary on culture, and I'm your host. Um, this is our first episode in over a month, which is, it really doesn't feel like that because I've had so much stuff going on, but it's been a pretty eventful month. So I'm pretty glad to kind of get back into this. Kind of flush out a lot of the stuff that I have rolling around in my head and kind of project it out. Um, there's a lot of really good stuff to go over. So I was gone. I got married, so that's pretty cool. And it's marriage is such a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful journey. It's a personal journey, right? But there's lots of growth, lots of pain as well. And it was really the central reasoning behind starting this podcast, kind of elevating, the sacrament of marriage, right? And encouraging everyone to kind of take part in it. Trying to, on one hand, you know, expose how profound and how, how beautiful it is, right? And how wonderful it is. And on the other hand, trying to kind of take back a little bit of that foundation that's been lost, right? And kind of get that back out there. So the ceremony was awesome. That was really cool. It was really incredible to have everybody out there. It was like I don't know. It was something else. Got the boys back together. A lot of them. Anyway, which I don't know. I wanted to invite a lot more people, but with all the stupid COVID rules and there's I don't know, just the big thing honestly was the logistics of it, right? Like I wanted to invite a lot more people. Like I wanted like the whole battalion there, but even the amount of people that we did invite that were able to come, it was almost too many. Like it got to a point where when we would go out to like restaurants and stuff, it would take like hours to get sat and hours to get food. So I mean, it worked out. It was really cool. I think it was, probably at its best when, we were kind of, at like the little cabin area that, that we had rented, and we were just kind of hanging out, as a group. We were doing like barbecues and stuff. So that was pretty cool. But other than that, I mean, had there been more people, I don't think, it would have been logistically possible to kind of go out into the area, because it's kind of a unique area, right? And explore it, and be able to go places because we were already kind of pushing the boundaries. So I don't know. I mean, it worked out. I mean, I wish we could have incorporated more people into it because it was just a really, a special moment, to bring everybody together, and it was, kind of a, in a celebration, right? In a celebration not just of my family, but of, the formation of all families. It's I don't know. Like it's just a really big deal. Saint John of Chrysostom called a family the foundation of society, right? And that is so true. So it was really really cool to be able to incorporate that. And incorporate a bunch of people into that. Into our own celebration. I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoyed being married. My wife is awesome. It's because of the way we approach things. Maybe it's really not that different, but it really I don't know. It's because we like live together and stuff beforehand, so it's not like there's not really a lot of novel stuff. If anything, now stuff is more expensive because now I'm paying for all of it, as opposed to her family paying for things like health insurance. But it was really super cool to finally cross that boundary, and have it or ordained, so to speak, right? It's formal now. It's special. It's the real deal. It's not just it's not we're not like this, right? We're not pretending. Like 50% of the way. You know, now this is real. I mean, we're married. I have a ring. It's she has a ring or two now, right? So it's just really cool. That was the whole thing was really awesome, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So that was really cool. Thank you for all of your congratulations and stuff. You know, all the outreach has just been so cool. You know, it really it's something else to know. You know, like how many people out there that, like, you know, a lot of times I don't talk to on a regular basis. You know, are willing to take that extra step and reach out. You know, and congratulate me. And I mean, that was pretty sweet. So um, today is Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. There is one thing I wanted to talk about with this. It's not, I don't think it's a very popular opinion, but Memorial Day was initially set out to be a day of remembrance for, you know, for servicemen who died in combat, right? In conflict, you know, not necessarily just in combat either, you know, but in conflict, right? And it's pretty common today that, you know, we've kind of taken that and run with it to where, you know, if you wore a uniform and you died, Memorial Day is about you. And it's like, that's really not the case. You know, like Memorial Day is specifically, you know, about people who died in combat, you know, that I mean, they're martyrs, right? You know, we fill ourselves with this hubris of, like, you know, we're conquering heroes when, you know, that wasn't us. You know, that wasn't a lot of us, you know. And just because someone wears a uniform and eventually dies doesn't make them a martyr to our nation, right? You know, they didn't die, you know, in the act, you know. And that there's nothing wrong with that, right? You don't have to die in the act in order to be, you know, a hero. But at the same time, you know, we should preserve the sanctity of that glorious death on the battlefield, right? For the people who earned it, you know, because that is a significant thing in its own right. You know, our honored dead, right? That died in combat, you know, that died, you know, for something. You know, it's a big deal, you know, when you change that, right? And now you're talking about people who came home and, you know, readjusted, you know, and tried to move on and or did move on, right? And then eventually, you know, they passed on, you know, because it happens. It's everybody dies. And that's not, you're kind of perverting the meaning of Memorial Day in that sense. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of an important thing, right? We should be able um, to honor our friends that have passed on. You know, obviously, you know, I've been affected by a number of my Marines that have died. You know, and it's just important to draw that boundary. You know, it really is, and we should discipline ourselves to not, you know, to not muddy the water. You know, because, you know, today, for instance, you know, one of my old senior enlisted, you know, role models, in all honesty, you know, kind of a very well known guy in my community. You know, he posted on Facebook this list of everyone from my operating specialty that had died, you know, and that included names of Marines that died in combat, you know, that were, you know, one of them, you know, literally died a hero, you know, like was, I mean, you know, it was the Battle of Al Nazira, you know, and was, you know, he was a very incredible individual. I'll put it that way. You know, mortally wounded, continued to engage, you know, bled out in, you know, just a knockdown, drag out firefight, you know, and I think it kind of took away from that, you know, putting his name next to the names of, you know, Marines who never went to combat, came home and killed themselves. You know, that's not the same. You're not the same quality. You know, you're just not. You know, and it's really sad, right? Because it's like, you know, you're discounting that in a way, but it's important. You know, it's an important boundary. You know, I mean, that was an incredible act of bravery. You know that, you know, it was a sacrifice, you know, for our nation, and a lot of this other stuff, you know, isn't. You know, and a couple of my very close friends have died. You know, and it's like I feel that, you know, that need to not let their memory fade away, but at the same time, it's like we have to treat things as they were intended. Like if everybody wins a trophy, nobody has a trophy. It kind of loses its significance. Or it loses its significance. So, I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Let's see. We're going to talk about. We kind of finished St. John of Chrysostom's on marriage and family life, which, again, like I highly, if you are thinking about getting married, right, which everybody should be, if that is a possibility in your life, you need to consult, the foundations of who you're supposed to be as a man and how your family is supposed to run. And that, I think, is a great resource. So once again, I highly recommend everybody buy that one and read it, and put it into use, right? Take that and, apply it to your life. Really kind of move the ball down the court a little bit. So today we're moving on, though. We're moving on to another one of my favorite books that I haven't actually finished this one. That's probably because it's technically 20 books long. It's called St. Augustine's City of God. Or it's not called So it's City of God by St. Augustine of Hippo. And if you're unfamiliar with St. Augustine of Hippo, he's known as one of the church fathers for the Latin Roman Catholic Church, right? One of the four is Augustine, Ambrose, Jerome, and there's one more that I don't remember. But anyways, he's one of the functioning. So as the church transitions from, the early church, right, where it's, kind of the insurgency, right, where it really comes into its own and it has an organization and, there's a philosophy and, an established rite of passage and like all this other stuff. He was very instrumental in that, right? This is a very important person. And St. Augustine was cited, so to relay how important his writings are, much later, well, for one, he authored, the split pretty much between the Eastern and Western churches, which the Orthodox argue that was pretty unintentional. I don't know, it's kind of little trivia, I guess. So much later, as the Protestant Reformations started to pop up in Europe, a lot of them actually cited a lot of St. Augustine's original theses on, hope, for example, right, and grace and stuff like that. So that's just to kind of give you a foundation of like who this guy is. As originally was born in North Africa and eventually migrated to, I believe, Rome at some point. I don't have that up right now because I actually have what I want to talk about up, but probably should have included that. Oh well. I'll probably, if I talk about this next time, I'll probably give a little bit better of a background to it. So, part one. So in book one, right, which this is kind of why I'm talking about it, is because the guy starts off really, really strong. So at first, I don't. The stuff about the pagans didn't quite hit me pretty hard, but this stuff is really good. So, but as for the good things of this life and its ills, God has willed that these should be common to both. And he's talking about good men and wicked men, right? That we might not be too eagerly to covet the things which wicked men are seen equally to enjoy, nor shrink with an unseemly fear from the ills which even good men suffer. For the good man is neither uplifted with the good things of time, nor broken by its ills, but the wicked man, because he is corrupted by this world's happiness, feels himself punished by its unhappiness. Wherefore, though good and bad men alike suffer, we must not suppose that there is no difference in the men themselves, because there is no difference in what they both suffer. For even in the likeness of the sufferings, there remains an unlikeness in the sufferers. And though exposed to the same anguish, virtue and vice are not the same thing. So material a difference does it make, not what ills are suffered, but what kind of man suffers them. For stirred up by the same movement, mud exhales a horrible stench, and ointment emits a fragrant odor. So basically, what he's saying here is that he's paying witness to the man who acts as a rock on a shoreline being battered constantly by the waves of the sea, right? And never breaks or gives any ground. That inner stability, is never really rocked. The boat stays nice and level as the ocean tries to toss it around. And we must make a constant effort to be spiritually free of the ebb and flow of fortune in our lives and not pin our well-being on the temporary highs and lows, right? That's what he's getting at. That we need to be above, the earthly things that happen around us. And that is, the mark of being a successful man, is that element of stoicism, that, just because you encounter adversity, doesn't mean that your life is over, and in fact, the ability to take that adversity and be undeterred, right, and not be put off and not be, derailed is evidence of being exactly who you're supposed to be, right? Who St. Augustine calls a good man, and that is an incredible, I guess accolade. I don't know, like it's that's what you want, that's what you want to be. You want to be who this guy calls good. Men must be spiritually and emotionally consistent and stable. We're the reliable constant of civilization, and we must protect ourselves from falling victim to the lust of the world. We must not limit ourselves to what is merely mortal and physical. Our calling and purpose is much greater, and we must treat ourselves as a temple to reflect that. If we don't constantly keep ourselves, in that condition where we are unaffected by all of this stuff that's happening around us, we're basically setting the tone that, we are easily influenced. I think the rock and the shoreline example was pretty good. But I mean, it's like looking at certain plants, like you can tell which ones are the hardwoods, that their roots go very deep into the ground and it really cultivates the soil around them, and which ones are easily blown over by the wind, right? There's a million different natural and, worldly examples that you could use, to really hammer this point home. We need to be unaffected by, the petty things that are happening around us, because otherwise, we're running around blind essentially, right? We're constantly chasing these highs, and eventually we get to the point where we're in the dopamine cycle. You constantly have to fry your receptors out a little bit more every single time. And, eventually your body just loses the ability to process it, right? So that's kind of what we're avoiding. And, so we must condition ourselves to view these hardships as opportunities to showcase our spiritual and emotional integrity. So how privileged we are, well, I guess not how privileged we are. So how privileged are we, right? How privileged are we to have the opportunity to display this? This is, and he talks about that a little bit later in the second passage that I'm going to read. But this is an opportunity. We're showcasing our ability to, overcome this stuff and be, really unaffected by it, right? It doesn't destabilize us too much. How privileged are we to really have that opportunity to, display our ability to sustain that, the awfulness and the wretchedness and, all this other stuff, of the world, right? And still be prosperous and fruitful, because that is kind of our original mission. So, and then, this obviously is the measure of strength and fortitude, which ultimately sets the foundation for being a man. These are some of the really masculine qualities, that were embraced by, some of the manliest men in history, right? Which, I mean, you can get really wrapped up following the historical examples and, elevating and idolizing and, all that other crap. But, it is kind of a good reference point, like you want to be like Theodore Roosevelt, right? You want to be, brawny and, just, known as kind of, an intimidating person, right? And intimidating because you're capable, and intimidating also because, nobody can get under your skin. You have the ability to outlast anybody that, really, really, tries to knock you off your game. So, Um, and then moving on, so he writes, so for every man how laudably he lives, yet yields in some points to lusts of the flesh. Where is the man who lives with them in the style in which it becomes us to live with them? For often we wickedly blind ourselves to the occasions of teaching and admonishing them, sometimes even of reprimanding and chiding them, either because we shrink from the labor or are ashamed to offend them, or because we fear to lose good friendships, lest this should stand in the way of our advancement or injure us in some worldly matter, which either our covetous disposition desires to obtain or our weakness shrinks from losing. They who themselves revolt from the conduct of the wicked, and live in quite another fashion, yet spare those faults in other men which they ought to reprehend and wean them from, and spare them because they fear to give offense, lest they should injure their interests in those which good men may innocently and legitimately use, though they use them more greedily than becomes persons who are strangers in this world and profess hope of a heavenly country. They abstain from interference because they fear it. If it fails of good effect, their own safety or reputation may be damaged or destroyed, not because they see that their preservation and good name are needful, that they may be able to influence those who need their instruction, but rather because they weakly relish the flattery and respect of men, and fear the judgments of the people, and of the pain or death of the body. That is to say, their non-intervention is the result of selfishness and not of love. They are punished together not because they have an equally corrupt life, but because the good, as well as the wicked, though not equally with them, love this present life, while they ought to hold it cheap, that the wicked, being admonished and reformed by their example, might lay hold of life eternal. Then lastly, there is another reason why the good are afflicted with temporal calamities. The reason is which Job's case exemplifies, that the human spirit may be proved, and that it may be manifested with what fortitude of pious trust, and how unmercenary a love it cleaves to God. So this is a little bit different than what we were talking about just a second ago. So we went from, it's a good man's responsibility to be unperturbed by the ebb and the flow of life, the inevitable ups and downs that we're going to go through, right? And maintains that constant on a spiritual plane and emotional, right? Because it's not just spiritual that we're talking about. We're talking about like as an individual, you're undisturbed, and at the same time, we're laying blame, for the part of the reason that we have downs, right? Ups and downs, right? So the part of the reason that the wave goes away and we have that ebb, the ebb tide, is because we tolerate, things that we shouldn't tolerate, right? And that's the underlying theme here. We deserve what we tolerate. As we tolerate our own sin and the sin of our neighbors, we become deserving of the ultimate end of that sin, which is the wages of death, right? Many of the awful trials and tribulations we endure are a direct result of our own unwillingness to intervene earlier and hold others to the standard we hold ourselves to. And yeah, I'm kind of reading some of this. I kind of got rid of the whole, extemporaneous format. So I did write this down. So if it sounds like I'm reading some of it, that's because I am. So it might be pretty obvious to tell when I'm going off on a tangent and when I'm not. But so as they're, as they hit that dopamine spiral and it increases in amplitude and stuff, it's because everything's kind of a wave, right? That's kind of the natural state of the world is, there's an ebb and a flow to everything. And as their, descent into that, right, increases, we are now affected, right? And, that's kind of our sentence at that point is that we get to endure, the evil that festered and became entrenched. And we do this out of our own self-preservation. And, the result is always a much worse problem than what we started with. So, this is applicable on both ends of the spectrum, right? So if you're looking at this on kind of a small scale to big scale level, right, at the micro level, this applies in our own lives and families, right? What we let fester, what we let, come into our homes and, be undisturbed, right? You hear people talk about, picking and choosing your battles, right? Well, there comes a cost with it. You let, some of the stuff into your home, you let these bad, ideologies or, I don't know, just bad habits, right? As they fester and they become, really pervasive, you let them go without, you view it as too high of a social cost, right? To intervene, or just, not worth the effort, which, there is some room for grace here, but, we're saying that, we deserve this in the end. We let this happen. And it also applies on a macro level, right? The same way that applies at the family level, it applies to our community in our nation. We have let people for so long, be able to, just run absolutely wild, and now we're living in a world where everybody runs absolutely wild, right? And we're condemned to live here. We have to live through this. There is no escape, because we made it so that there could be no escape. We allowed this to fester to a point where it corrupted the strongest regime in the world, and now we get to live in a regime that hates us, right? So, and that applies on the family level as much as it applies at that macro level, right? Is we view it as, an act of grace, or, I don't, you try and you avoid, conflict, like, for the sake of avoiding conflict, right? Like, well, that's your decision. You're an individual, whatever, like, if you bow out of doing your job, and of, making sure that things are right, you deserve what comes. And what we take away from this is that it is our duty to intervene and set our peers straight, right? At any of those levels. And I'm guilty of this as much as everybody else is. There's actually a particular situation that I'm thinking of at work, that I'm trying to figure out how to, like, tactfully mention it into the conversation. I don't want to get too carried away, because, trying to maintain a little bit of anonymity here. But, so I have this in my office space, right? Because I work at a corporate gig now, right? Big bad corporate worker. One of the people there, decided to, genitally mutilate themselves and try and pass as a woman. And it's like, what do you do? Like, I work with fucking Baphomet, it's like a fucking demon sitting across from me, that's just like, it's really disconcerting, and that thing, is roaming around, going into bathrooms, and, I mean, a statistical overwhelming number of them are predators in some way or another, right? And this thing is just roaming around in front of me, free, setting off all these alarm bells. I mean, it's, but what do I say? What am I supposed to say? But, the end result is that I get to, by not saying anything, right? Because I haven't, because I like my job, is, part of being in a corporate environment is the moment you out yourself, you get what's coming. But what the end result of that is that I get to live in that environment, right? Now I get to live in this fucking dystopia because I didn't say anything, right? Because I didn't tell it, to fuck off and, go be a demon somewhere else. Because I didn't do that, I deserve, whatever comes from it. And, that applies on every level, right? It's like if you're in a relationship, and, the other person is not treating you the right way, you deserve that if you don't say anything, which is why you need to say something, which is why you need to stand up for yourself, not just for yourself, but for that role that you're in. It's why you need to right the ship and make sure that, that the proper hierarchy is being, respected. And this is just explaining it. So, we do this out of our own self-preservation, and the result is a much worse problem than what we started with, right? I'm avoiding saying something, I'm avoiding, I guess, making it known that, like that's a reprehensible way to live, and it's disgusting, and it's only hurting itself by doing that, and we're only hurting ourselves by tolerating it, right? And it'll be a much worse problem in the future, if I continue to let that thing, permeate, its existence in where I am, and that's its influence, and this applies to more than just that situation, right? The influence of that is worse than, its mere presence, right? It's one thing for a bad person to show up sit in the corner and not say anything. It's another entirely for them, because that's never how it works, right? They don't just show up, sit in the corner, and don't say anything. They're not just existing, right? They actively corrupt the people around you, and they're predators, right? They predate on the people around you, around them. And that's what you're getting when you tolerate it. So I'm kind of amping myself up there, but the point is, that it's our obligation, right, to involve ourselves everywhere we see, these horrible things happen, and we need to correct our peers, right? And so maybe the answer to that is like, it's not really my peer, right? Because it's just a godless, soulless corporate environment, which is just destroying me in ways that, I haven't quite comprehended yet. But like, for example, if it was my family, or if it's my friends, it becomes that much more of a priority to involve yourself. If it's your significant other and they're behaving in ways that are horrible, not just horrible, right, but that are actively counterproductive, that set you back, and set the relationship back, and are negative, and bring you down and bring the relationship down and just make it tough, right? You have an obligation to do your job, to do your duty and set that straight. Don't tolerate that. And it's not a matter of want, right? And that's kind of the problem, is that for so long, we've decided that, it's, oh, you don't really have to do that, right? You can, it's okay, don't sweat the small stuff. No, dude, like, sweat the small stuff. Get in there and don't let it stay. And there's a huge degree of responsibility that comes with this, right? You can't just be a tyrant, like you're not doing this, because it annoys you, right? Cindy wears a green shirt to work and it annoys you, right? That's not what we're talking about. Little things like that, that don't affect you, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things that directly affect you, that are fucked up, and you're afraid of intervening on, right? You're afraid of talking about, so that's kind of the problem. And ultimately, we're our brother's keeper, right? This is I think this is important for women too, like, from a man to woman perspective, but this is more important on a fraternal level, right? We're our brother's keeper, and so goes the nation, goes the individual, right? If we let our brothers fail and falter and squander their lives and die, because the wages of sin are death, right? Death and destruction. We deserve that fate. We deserve that because we let it happen. And, the second theme here, right, to kind of shift gears a little bit, and this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, is that our trials are also, just a testament to the triumph of the human spirit. They're a test to verify that we deserve what we've been given. We deserve our birthright. It's been ordained, right? It's been ordained, and we've reaped the benefits of for generations. We have to deserve that. We have to prove that we deserve it. Now, on a macro level, for many, many years, our people have gotten fat off of this, right? Off the excesses of modernity without investing in it. Its infrastructure is dying, and our people have just let it go. And now, we've gotten to a point where, the whole thing is collapsing, and we must prove that we're still the people worth inheriting that civilization, right? We must, so it's a little bit of the first one, right? It wasn't corrected, now we get to pay the price, but more so it's our ability, we're demonstrating, right, and sharpening ourselves, by proving our ability to persevere through this stuff. And on the micro level, that sharpening thing, that was actually my next analogy here. So, the it's like a blade, right? Like a knife blade, or whatever. You don't just sharpen a knife blade, just by rubbing a paper towel on it, and wiping the grime off. That's not how it works. You have to use a stone, or another, an iron sharpener, right? And it cleanses the surface of imperfections. it hones that blade so that it's been through all that pressure and the heat and the abrasion. It's been honed to a really fine edge. And if it hasn't, then it's a dull blade. So that's what we're demonstrating. We are the blade, right? And the horrible trials that we must endure shape us, and harden us to be who we must become, right? Because if you're using a dull knife, you're not getting anywhere, right? But, in order to sharpen that knife, you have to take a little bit off, and it's kind of a tough process. You're being really abrasive to the knife. You're literally, shearing steel off of this thing, and we are the same way. We need to be sharpened in order to, be who we are supposed to be. So that kind of closes out the philosophical parts that I wanted to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed that. I think I picked the book up for like 99 cents. I have the Kindle version, which is cool because St. Augustine, or the people who translated St. Augustine, they like to use really big words that I don't know. So it's pretty helpful to be able to Google them. So that's so it was written in Latin, right? Which is where, he misinterpreted, or so the Greeks say, he misinterpreted some things, in the translation between Greek and Latin, and most of the original documents were written in Greek or whatever. So that's kind of fun. Moving on. Current events. Everybody's favorite topic. Current events. It kind of sucks. I've been banned on Facebook again. And, this last month, has been just insane. Just insane. And it's like, we talk about this dystopia. We talk about, the world collapsing. We talk, constantly about how, we are going to endure, what generations before us never even thought was remotely possible. We are living through the apocalypse in a huge way. Maybe it's not the apocalypse, right? Maybe this isn't it, but it's close. Like as far as waves go, the amplitude, we are clearly on the upswing. We have not reached the zenith yet, or the downstroke, whatever you prefer there. Like we have clearly not reached the bottom. And I as an example of this, right? It's so as much as I talk about this, and as much as I post on Facebook, and I tell you to prepare, and we need to bond together and come close and form our own communities, and work together as a team. Form our teams to work together as a team, right? It still shocks me. And I hate to say that because it's like, if you're shocked, you weren't expecting it. I am expecting it, right? But it's like, wow, a lot of this stuff, I thought was going to be like down the road. And no, it's here, So the first one out of Dallas, Texas, this one makes my blood boil. Oh my gosh. So there was a 4-year-old little boy, a little white boy. His name was Cash. He had a twin brother, and they were sleeping at home. And this black teenager, Darian Brown, he's 18 years old, with an ankle monitor on, breaks into this family's house in the middle of the early morning, right before 5 a.m. Early morning. Snatches this little boy out of his bed. The whole thing's on camera, right? Like they've got him on camera, snatching this little boy out of his bed and carrying him out of his room and brutally murdering him. That's not on camera, unfortunately, but, they find him in the street, brutally murdered, stabbed to death, what they don't even know what. They don't know what the murder object was. Just horribly mutilated. His face is mutilated. A 4-year-old little boy, a child, a small child, a small white kid, ripped from his bed in his family's home and fucking murdered in the street, and this creature's fucking mom, decides to do an interview with police, or not police, with the press. And this bitch has the audacity to say he was framed. Like, he's got an ankle monitor. You can see it in the video. You know? And, I mean, just how are we supposed to be civil with these people? Right? Like, there's no accountability. You know, if this was switched, if a white man broke into a black home and murdered some black child, you know, think about all of the mass shooters. You know, literally just last week, you know, or the other week, you know, there was some white guy that went and shot up, you know, a transit office in California. You know, what's his dad say? You know, I feel horrible for the families. You know, nothing can ever, you know, atone for this. You know, I'm so sorry. You know, nothing but sorrow. And what's this degenerate thing say? You know, oh, it wasn't my son. He was framed. He was framed and shit. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is inhuman. That's not what people do. That's not what a rational individual says. You know, like, think about how, you know, nobody's mad about this. Nobody's mad about this. You know, that's the other thing. You know, if anyone white, you know, went through this, you know, and you know, their kid was the bad guy, and they said anything that was not just groveling for respect, right? You know, what would be the response? It would be visceral. It would be visceral, right? You know, for example, you know, Mussolini's granddaughter, you know, like, said something, you know, vaguely in defense of her own grandfather, who was brutally murdered, you know, and the entire internet, you know, just went apeshit, you know, and you know, doxed her, you know, just did threats, death threats, you know, just like putting her picture over her grandfather's, you know, mutilated face and saying, this is you. You know, and what happens when it's one of our chosen minorities? Nothing. There's no outburst. This is normal in their lives. This is normal, or she wouldn't say it. You know, this isn't something that they're saying at home, you know, safely inside their house, right? This is to the press. She doesn't think anything bad is going to happen. There's no recourse. You know, this is the you know, the shaped, you know, the filtered version of her thoughts. My son is framed. That's such a shitty excuse. Of course he's not framed. You just don't think he did anything wrong. Which, that's comical. You know, I don't even know why they bother, you know, hiding that. I mean, I don't know. We'll get to the next story here in a second. I mean, that's just as fucking insane. Just how fucking brutal. You know, this is like last year when, you know, Cannon Hinnon? You know, the poor little toddler who was riding his bike, you know, and rode through some guy's yard. It gets executed in front of his siblings. Shot in the face. What the fuck? These people are inhuman. They're not human. They're not the same species as you and I. You know, like, you have to think, you know, it's not just that this happened, right? It's that it happened and it was culturally acceptable. You know, no one was calling, no one black is out in the street saying, what an awful thing. You know, what an awful thing. It's not happening. It's not happening. They think it's okay. You know, ultimately, they think it's okay. And we'll get to that. You know, this isn't just a random fucking statement. We know they think it's okay. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. Hang on, I'm finding one of my stories here because the coup de grace here is just, you know, like, it just never gets better. I'll find that in a sec. So then, right, so that, you know, that got my blood boiling when that came out. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, like, that's where we're at. You know, they're going to come into our houses and steal our children and murder them in the street. You know, and what are we going to say? You know, what did Cannon Hinnon's dad say? Oh, I don't want this to be about race. Of course it's about race, you idiot. You know, Like, nobody, no white person would do that. They wouldn't, because there would be brutal consequences for their family. We work differently. I don't know. It's just a horrible situation. It's a horrible situation. And there is no recourse culturally from this man's cultural group, which is a problem. Because this is a cultural problem. These aren't random happenings. This just happened. This just happened. It wasn't that long before that a man in El Paso, a black man, was watching a toddler for his white friends. It's a white kid, spoiler alert. And he does a wrestling move that crushes the child's chest and kills him. It's only a little bit before that there's a 3-year-old in South Carolina whose adoptive black parents beat her to death. It's only a little bit before that Cannon Hinnant is brutally murdered in front of his siblings. It's only a little bit before that there's just an endless amount of these things. Endless amount of these crimes. They're not statistical anomalies. They happen all the time. And nothing happens. And no one's talking about it. No one's saying anything. Because the ultimate result here, we know, everybody knows, that this stuff happens now. It's not a secret, right? It's just not being talked about. It's just insane. The whole thing, I don't know, I should probably stop talking about it before I start just going off the rails here. This really excites me, in a horrible way. It really gets my blood pumping. I hate this. I hate that we have allowed this. These were the people who used to be deathly afraid of us. They were. They were afraid of being accused of rape. Afraid. And why? Because we used to aggressively police our neighborhoods. We used to aggressively make it so that no one else could come in and harm our neighbors and harm our community and kill our children. Rape and murder our children, right? We made sure that if anybody did that, there was absolute hell to pay. And they were afraid. They were deathly afraid. And now they're not. We've taken it away, right? We've gotten rid of it, and now they're not afraid. And what's happened? We were told that, our ancestors were horribly wrong for all of these things, for going too far, for taking it too far, right? And what's the result? What's the result? We get to live in this world where that's okay. But it gets so much better, right? It gets so much better because a couple days later, a couple in Ohio, a white couple, were at a water park where they were accused of cutting in line by a bunch of black teenagers. Accused. Now, when you read the article, it says they cut in line, which is comical, right? Because it's like they deserved what happens next. It's like they deserved it. You cut a black person in line, you deserve to get your ass kicked. So this mob of thugs, of young animals, just I don't know, freaks off their leash, right? They beat this young woman to within an inch of her life, possibly permanently disable her. And her boyfriend, he does his best. He fights back. It's a mob, so he didn't win, right? But he fights back. He's the only one who gets arrested. He's the only one who gets arrested, right? So clearly, the mob is after you. They come up with whatever ridiculous justification they want, to be inhuman to you. And what happens? If you defend yourself, you get arrested. You defend yourself, you get arrested. But it gets worse, right? It gets worse because a couple days later, there's a black fast food worker, right? Kind of the same thing. An elderly white man comes in and calls him the forbidden word. Supposedly, there's no proof of that, allegedly, right? And this animal beats this elderly man to death. Beats him to death. Now, he's arrested, right? But what can we expect from that? Oh, that happened a little while ago. There's a FedEx delivery driver, elderly man, same thing. I think they got that one on video. He might have said it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what you say, beat to death and then found innocent, not guilty. Oh, but it gets so much worse, right? Because 2 days ago, a black man in South Carolina who was on trial for murder because he attempted to carjack an elderly white man, an ex-police chief or fire chief, right? Just a pillar of his community, sitting at a red light. Black guy comes up, tries to carjack him, shoots him 8 times as he tries to drive away. Black man is arrested and admits to it. Says, yes, I shot that white guy because I was afraid of losing my ride. I was afraid of losing my ride. Total admission. Dead to rights. Clearly, it's murder. It's murder. There's no... Jury finds him innocent. A black man in this country can kill you, can murder you for no reason, no real reason, just fucking because, and admit to it and tell the truth. That guy didn't lie, right? He didn't lie. He was afraid of losing his ride, so he shot. Tells the truth and is found innocent. The justice system will not protect you. The justice system did not put that man in prison like it was supposed to. And even if it did, right? Because we're talking about, the escalation here. It's not like that would have solved it. That wouldn't have made this argument go away. In South Africa, same as in California, right? They'll put you in prison for life. Maybe. And, 5 years, 10 years come down the road, right? And they'll release you for whatever stupid reason. California just released like 26,000 violent criminals, because because of overcrowding. Right? That's how absurd it was. Overcrowding. Release violent rapists, murderers. Don't care. Just obscene. It's comical. It's fucking comical. Except if you defend yourself, you go to prison. There was another man in South Carolina a little while ago who was talking on the phone and supposedly used the N-word, right? Supposedly used the N-word. Black man walks up, pushes him, assaults him. And so the guy shoots he's attacked out of the blue, right? Shoots the guy who's attacking him, gets sent to prison for murder. If you even remotely, it's not just an explicit, by the skin of your teeth, you shoot him in time not to die, you're going to prison. If you talk to the police, right? If you deal with law enforcement, which they might still track you down, right? But if you comply with this regime, your life is over. Your life is over. They can murder you. They can murder your family, and the cops don't care. And the cops don't care. It's not just the cops, it's the justice system. The justice system will not come down on them. Just yesterday, an unarmed 16-year-old white boy was executed by police in, I believe it was Fresno. I might have to look again. It might have been like, it might have started with an S. It was some fucking city in California, unarmed, trying to, I don't know, kid was out being fucking stupid, just running from the cops because he was high, is a long-haired, 16-year-old fucking pothead, tries to drive around the police and they execute him, in his car, right? But God forbid you defend yourself. God forbid somebody try to apply the rule of law to these people that hate you, that want to kill you, which that's our next one. So that was originally, when I wrote this in here, that was the coup de grace, right? A black man attempted to carjack an elderly white man, and executes him and is found innocent. How insane. How insane. Found innocent. Just blows my mind. But it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse because not only are they found innocent, right? Not only. Oh my gosh. Here, let me find this real quick. I mean, it's just so fucking crazy. Like if it wasn't happening, if I didn't watch the fucking video, I would just think that, it's not real. That it wasn't fucking real. Oh, son of a bitch. Where is that article? All right, so it's a Twitter post. All right, so it's not really an article, but it's a video, which is so much better. Because I don't need a journalist perverting what's happening to me, to glass it over and make it, what it's not, right? So as if that wasn't bad enough, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a black nationalist rally to, on the, was it the not the 100th anniversary, it was the 110th anniversary or something, or maybe a little bit later, I don't know, some anniversary of, the Tulsa race riot, right, in which, somewhere between 39 and like a couple hundred black people were killed, by whites who rioted, burned down Black Wall Street, which, is what they call a laundromat, and was it like a bar or something? Like, just ridiculous. Black Wall Street. Just fucking absurd, And so these motherfuckers are standing there openly talking about, and I quote, "When the time has come for rat-a-tat-tat-tat, cracker, we will kill everything white in sight. Once they are buried, we must bury them, dig them up, and kill them again." And of course, we ain't ever asked this country for one thing. Wrong. We have proven ourselves to be civil people, clearly, right? Just insane. We will kill everything white in sight. This isn't South Africa. There was a political party a while ago for President Zuma in South Africa that was, kill the Boer, which is the slang term for the white people in South Africa of Dutch descent, right? The Boers. Roaming around with white baby dolls, nailed to, sticks. And it's here. It's here. This isn't 20 years from now. This isn't 30 years from now. They are here. This isn't at some, back room rally with 20 people. There are thousands of people at this event. Thousands of black nationalists that are all armed, that are all, they are allowed to buy guns, right? They are allowed to do this stuff. And our side, supposedly, right, the Trump team, is a proponent of it. The Black Guns group or whatever they call themselves, Candace Owens and, this, gun control is racist. These people hate you. They hate you. They've always hated you. And we're to the point now where it's like they have the power. They have been able to organize. Our side is using their organizing as some kind of a a positive thing. Look how woke we are. Look how not racist we are. We let black people come out into our streets and talk about killing everybody white in sight as they break into our homes and steal our children and brutally, torture them to death. As we let these people, fabricate crimes and butcher our children in the streets and beat our young women within an inch of their lives. And when you fight back, we arrest you. We let them have their own word, right? Which is just obscene. Which is just so obscene. That is so insane. And God forbid somebody else say it. It's a death sentence. And that's okay. But it gets so much worse, right? Because these people that are saying, Cracker, we will kill everything white in sight, are killing white people because they want to run away from a carjacking, and our justice system finds them innocent. How insane is this? We pay taxes. They take money out of our paychecks. White people are the only ethnic group in this country, that has a positive return on the taxes that it pays to society. Right? Like, we pay more taxes than we receive in welfare. We are the only group that does that. Straight white men. And we are not even gifted with a justice system that will protect us when we cannot protect ourselves. That will target us when we protect ourselves. This is so awful. And I know I'm kind of talking in a circle here. I just really want to hammer that. This isn't a Black Mirror episode. This isn't fake. This isn't fiction. This is real. It happened. The most recent one happened on May 29th. It's May 31st. What's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know, but it's only going to get worse. Right? Because we deserve this because we didn't do anything to stop it. And we deserve this because we're only letting it continue. We don't do anything. We have to live here with these people that hate us, that have been bred to hate us, that their culture reinforces this hatred of us. And we just have to take it. Supposedly, right? I mean, what are you going to do? White boy? You can't get together with your brothers and fight back. You will be ostracized from society. And we'll take that a step farther, right? You can't get together and fight back because we will throw you in a prison cell for 23 hours a day. Our guards will come in and beat you and humiliate you, and you will not get legal counsel. We will wipe the floor with the Constitution your fathers died to uphold. We will deny you critical life-saving medical treatment, and we will tell the world that you deserve it because you supported Donald Trump. It was a big uprising. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to find out about it a little bit more. We need to keep an eye on this, right? Which, we all knew that this was going to happen anyway. It's really not that much of a surprise. Trump supporters, white Trump supporters who were arrested following the Capitol riot, the Capitol protest, which I feel comfortable calling it a riot because I wanted it to be a riot. I want people to stand up to this. Somebody has to say something. Somebody has to do something. We can't live. And if you do, they take you and, you think that these folks are getting, the free TV time and, the work release programs and, all the free shit mailed to you. No. You are a threat to the system. So they are going to beat you. They are going to torture you. They are going to break every rule that they made because of, looks and what all that other stupid shit they made that, made you think that we were living in a civilized country. They're going to get rid of all of it. They're going to treat you worse than any minority they have ever oppressed in this country's history. They are going to treat you worse. And we know this. It's happened in our lifetimes. Waco happened in our lifetimes, right? Burned to, and that's, Waco is kind of a weird example, right? Because it's like, not everybody is forming, this weird Protestant cult, living in the weeds, and, there's a bunch of illegitimate children and all this other crap. But the point is that, they're not going into black neighborhoods that are, ethnically cleansing our cities of white people. I'm going to give a little bit of personal information. We were in the northern half of the Midwest. And in a certain city that went through a lot of rioting over the last year, a lot of rioting, we encountered a white couple that were at the wedding that were liberals. They were liberals. And they came to us in fear because they openly admitted, they were like, we are not safe. We are not safe. We're not safe in our homes. We're not safe at our jobs. We're not safe going to our car. We're not safe. We live in hell. And that is coming to every street, to every neighborhood in the United States. And we know it's here. That's not hyperbole. It's coming. I talked about this last time. Federally, they have mandated that they are no longer allowed to build suburbs. They are no longer allowing places to take federal money, which is, how all these places are surviving, right? The cities are not getting the money from the states or not getting the money from the feds if they don't build Section 8 housing in your neighborhoods. This is coming everywhere. It will come to the rural areas. It will come to suburbia. And if you fight back, if not even fight back, if you just get mad and break a couple windows, push a couple cops around, and steal Speaker Pelosi's podium, right? Which, there's two ways to look at the riot on the 6th. The first is that it's glorious, right? And Americans finally fought back. Finally fought back. It's so late in the game. So beyond when it should have happened. They finally fought back. And it was a very small show of force. And they were on the Senate floor in 2 hours. Right? And the other way to frame it, they're calling it an insurrection. And it's like grandma was roaming around the fucking Capitol taking selfies and it's an insurrection. Shut your mouth. Obviously that's not the truth. Right? But, there's two ways to look at it. Right? And it's like, the most positive example that you can take away from that is that it was an insurrection, that somebody tried to stand up and fight back. And what did they do to those people? They tracked them down. They live in fear. They live in fear. They tracked them down, killed their dogs, invaded their homes, put them in jail, and tortured them. Martin Luther King was not tortured when he was in prison in Selma, Alabama. He was not beaten by the police like this. He was not kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day and denied private counsel by his lawyer and denied life-saving critical treatment from his doctor. Malcolm X was not treated that way. All of these people who claim oppression in the United States have never been treated in this way. Never. I read something interesting the other day that's very true. The rhetoric of our culture is so much worse for white people than Nazi rhetoric was for Jews. Our rhetoric for white people in modern culture is so much worse than the Soviet rhetoric was for capitalists, for fascists, for Christians. People that they killed by the million. By the million. Starved to death. That is so, sadistic, right? Starved to death. They didn't just starve them to death. They made them work their fields until their children starved to death. They wouldn't let them eat the fruit of their own labor. They made them work to death in their own fields and fed the rest of the nation off of their starving corpses. In Turkey, in Anatolia, the Turks' rhetoric was not as bad before they slaughtered the Armenians as modern rhetoric is about white people. Think about that. They butchered these people. Butchered them. Crucified them. Literally. Crucified children. Raped women to death. You want to talk about a brutal genocide. I was asked the other day, what's the worst genocide of the 20th century? And I said the Holodomor. Just because it killed so many Christians. The Armenian genocide didn't kill as many people, but it was brutal. It was fucking brutal. And we live in an age when the rhetoric is worse. And you have to ask yourself, what's coming? You know what's coming. You know what's here. It's here. It's here. We live it. When whites protested segregation in the South, they were met at bayonet point by the army. They were beaten and stabbed and shot by our own army. By people who were far more sympathetic to their cause then than people who are sympathetic to our cause now. And our cause is survival. That's it. That's it. That's only survival. And these people at the time, because this is the 60s, right? The army is made up of a bunch of white good old boys, a lot of them from the South. Disproportionately from the South. That's been a unique factor, right? Ever since the end of the Civil War. Disproportionately, the South pays the price for America's wars. Weird. Just so weird. But just missing the point. The system is so against you, it will break its own rules to keep you in place. As it changes the rules and softens them. Everybody has this image that, we've gone soft. We haven't gone soft. We haven't gone soft. Our government just doesn't cater to us anymore. Our state does not cater to us. Our system does not cater to us. And that's a problem. That is a problem. Because we are the lifeblood of this country. This is our nation. And in our nation, in the system that our fathers died to uphold, that our families bled to make. My family went through horrible, horrible trials in settling the West. And the civilization that we have now allows, a black man to break into a home, murder a white child, and allows his mom to go on TV and say it's not his fault. It's not his fault. Think about what that takes. Culturally, right? I don't know. The point is that it's not our country anymore. It's not our system. And obviously, if you're listening to that, you probably know that. Or listening to this, you probably know that. But we need to come up with solutions, right? And that's kind of the point of the initial part of this podcast, is our civilization has gone this way because we've lost our fundamentals. We've lost the ability to really associate with, the stalwarts that founded our civilization. It's unrecognizable to how it began. And that's my intent, right? Is that, the family is the foundation of society. So that's why it's so important, right? It's not just about us. It's not just about your happiness. It's not just about your satisfaction in a relationship. It's about your community. It's about your nation. It's about, the thousands and millions of people that came before you that struggled and struggled and struggled to give you what you have now. And it is our obligation to continue that. And the way that starts is by building a strong foundation. Our foundation is Christianity. Our foundation comes from the ancient saints. St. Augustine, St. John of Chrysostom, St. Ambrose. That's where it comes from. And it's a necessity, right? We have to take into account how they approach things, because they set up our civilization for the next 2,000 years. So until we figure that out, until we are able to right the ship, until we can get to a point where our families are stable at the immediate level, then we can work on the external, or our extended families, right? And then once we work on our extended families and setting up an intergenerational, system, now we can work on our communities. We're 3 generations away from this going away, from us having the offense. So what do? Well, we labor endlessly to set the right foundation, right? As the walls crumble, we are picking up bricks left and right, and we are putting down a foundation to build our house on. Right? We are building much smaller walls in much tighter circles. They can't break us, because if they do, we die. Our families die. They will break into your homes. They will rip your children from their beds and rape and horribly mutilate their bodies in the street. And we are rapidly approaching a day. This is South Carolina. This is not California. We are rapidly approaching a day when they can do it and the law will not stop them. The law will only intervene enough for you to think that it still represents your interest just enough to not fight back, right? Because this is a careful dance. It's a very careful dance. They have to allow some of this, right? The ultimate goal is to wipe us out. The ultimate goal is to eliminate us, because we are a problem for these corporate interests. And it's not just corporate interests. There's a lot of other interests that are involved that are, it's on more of a, not more, it's on a spiritual plane, right? The annihilation of the Goyim. It's so, it's amazing that we were misled for so long about this stuff, right? How crazy to think that it wasn't happening. I used to think that we were all the same. I really did. Some of my best friends were black men. But over time, it became apparent that, that they were my friend, but only as long as I toed the line. They were my friend only as long as I didn't say anything. I didn't have the wrong opinions, right? Because, I have friends that are open communists. They're not good friends. I don't talk to them a lot, right? But there's people that I'm civil with, that I can, that we have a blood bond. They can come over to my house. We can have a beer. We can hang out. Someone comes after them, they're my brother. The only one who's going to put them in the grave is me. And maybe it'll come to that time. I don't know. But he's my brother. And these motherfuckers don't think like that. They will turn on you in an instant. That's what happened. That's what happened. More and more of my friends turned on me. Not just me, but they exhibited the behaviors of people who were turning on their friends the moment the mob came after them. You know? They will never love and cherish your relationship the way they will cherish their in-group preference. And I can't blame them. I don't hate them. I don't hate them. I'd like to point that out. You know, like there's a lot of people listen to, oh, you hate black people. I don't hate black people. I don't. I wish white people, I wish we could emulate that. I wish people who looked like me could come together and be like, we're protecting each other. We're a team. We're a team. We can have our squabbles. We can have our conflicts. But at the end of the day, when the group survival is threatened, we're a group. We're brothers. We're a team. And we're not like that. So in a lot of ways, I'm jealous, right? I'm jealous of that. You know, and I'm also angry because, you know, we are under the presumption that we are all equal. Our justice system is supposed to be written under the presumption that we are all equal, that we are all the same, that we are treated the same. And we're not. And we're not. We can expect to be treated differently because of lies that were made up. And that's the other part, right? So, we're talking about, I was talking about the armed black nationalist militia shows up in Tulsa for the remembrance of the Tulsa race riot. And they're talking about 3,000 black men were killed. You know what? I wish that white people were capable of doing that. I wish that we had it in us right now to make people who, because the whole thing started over a black man raping a white woman. Now they say supposedly, a black man was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman. So what happened? White people cleaned out the black neighborhood. Made it very clear, you are not going to come into our neighborhoods and assault our most cherished, individuals, right? Our protected class, our young women. You are not going to come into our homes and rape and murder our children and mutilate their bodies in the streets. I wish we had that in us. But we don't, and we didn't. They were afraid. They were very afraid, but it wasn't 3,000 black people. It was like, I don't know. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I'll say 100. I'll say 100. Multiple days of violent rioting. A couple hundred, maybe. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. But that doesn't make the hatred a lie, right? They still, even in the 90s, right? Everybody thinks, oh, well, it didn't used to be like that. Oh, it used to be. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. In the mid-90s, there was, I have to find it. Pull it up on Instagram here real quick. There was I believe he murdered a white family. And he said he just wanted to find a white person to kill. Here we go. On February 19th, 1998, Willie Arnold Ryman, that's the victim, lost his life. He's a white guy. He kind of looks like Michael Scott from The Office. You can tell he's a family man. He's got a firefighter shirt on. His sister asked him to check on her daughters who were home alone because she couldn't reach them from her work phone. When he arrived, he found Elroy Chester there. That's the black man. This is in Beaumont, Texas. Elroy had secretly followed Willie's teenage niece to the house. He cut the phone lines, walked in with a gun, and said, "I bet you wish you'd locked the door, don't you?" He bound her with tape, and then when her younger sister came home from a date, he did the same. Elroy raped and sodomized the girls for hours before their uncle arrived. And when Willie walked into the home, Elroy shot him in the chest and fled. During his trial for Willie's murder and many other crimes, Elroy blamed his actions on his hate for white people and said if he hadn't been caught, he would still be out there shooting white folks. Now, when you talk about this with someone who's a liberal, they automatically, there's a list. It's a very short list, and it's all inflated and twisted. It's a very short list of white crimes that are similar, right? I think his name is James Byrd, right? What about the Byrd murder? A couple white supremacists went and grabbed some nice black man and dragged him behind his truck or whatever. They just wanted to kill a black man. Well, they did. What they didn't tell you was that the men who killed James Byrd Jr. had been to prison for, I don't know, dumb crimes. Or I think the one was a felon, where they were gang raped by black men constantly. So we're talking about two levels of hate. This man hated this white family because they were white. Never in his life did he experience anything besides conditioning, besides just propaganda, right? That led him to that. Look at what he did. Raped and sodomized teenagers for hours and executed their uncle. And said just because he hated white people. Nothing led to that. And at the same time, the favorite, right? The prime example of white racism in the modern age. White man kills an innocent black man. They were gang raped constantly for years. They're not the same. It's not an equal comparison, right? We're dealing with people that aren't people. That's not a person. That's not how a human behaves. You can reason with a man. The people who killed James Byrd Jr. did not grow up hating black men. They didn't. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're a little prejudiced, right? But they didn't hate black men until they were gang raped for years in prison. This man didn't deal with that. Same time frame, right? Same time frame. I believe James Byrd was killed in like 1997. I'll have to look that up real quick. Hang on. I don't want to say that and be wrong. I hate being wrong. June 7th, 1998. When was this? February 19th, 1998. In Jasper, Texas. Both of these are in Texas. Don't mess with Texas. Well, guess what, brother? They already are. They already have been. But you know what? You have been brainwashed to think that, being racist is calling a black man boy or saying the N-word. And it's like, it's not even comparable. When there's a racially, one of the most visible racially motivated murders in the United States in history, right? International news, it's not even remotely comparable. I don't know. But, the point is that, when we're talking about how to deal with this stuff, and how to move on, it's important to realize what we're dealing with, right? So the whole point of this is not to get you down. It's not to get you down. It's not to make you feel like, you're not going to come back from this. That you're trapped, that you're a slave. We are going to endure this. We are going to endure many things that are more horrible than anything our grandparents ever dealt with. And, the ultimate truth is that, this hasn't come up because it's been so easy to ostracize people who called it out in the past, because the people who dealt with this were working class. were working class. That man was a firefighter. His sister was working a shift. She was probably a single mom. Working class. They're not articulate. We know working class people all over the place. They're not articulate. They're great people. I love being in the working class. I love being in the working class more than I love being no, it's not even close. It's not even close. In fact, that'll probably wind up being my career, honestly, is I'll find a way to own my own blue collar business, because, the quality of the people that you deal with are so much better. They're honest, they're hardworking, they're good people, but they're not articulate. Because they didn't spend years in school learning how to finesse their words and get to the bottom of an argument by endless amounts of, meditation and, careful contemplation. They just kind of get to a point where it's good enough and they're moving on because they have more important shit to do. And so we've demonized them. If you're a racist, you're stupid. Racist, it's so easy to say that word, racist. Racially motivated. And the articulated viewpoint is that, it's important to ensure the integrity of our in-group because we have a common culture with those in our in-group, right? And so the point that I'm making here is that, we've demonized the working class, and the working class is not the only ones to feel this pain. And they don't deserve to. They don't deserve to. We have horribly sinned against ourselves, against heaven, against our own people by treating them like this because they were inarticulate and telling the truth. That black people hate you, and when they come to their neighborhood in any serious number, not even, right? Even these little metrosexual, woke dudes, right, that run around in skinny jeans and, like manga, they still don't fucking like you. In fact, they're quicker to call racism than your thugs. They're quicker to call racism than your thugs because they're smarter and they know how to exploit it better. Your thug is pretty fucking dumb on average, right? He'll wait until, you come down on him and he'll try to take advantage of you, but, you gotta be pretty blatant for the most part, right? It's them smart motherfuckers that are metrosexual. They're very effeminate, but damn, if they don't know how to pull racism out of nothing. That is like their primary trait. They are very good at it. They are very good at it. And so, the end result of this is that everybody gets to live with it, and it's righteous. It is absolutely righteous. I'm not complaining about that because the people from my social class and my economic class deserve it. They deserve to deal with these horrible, horrible things. And they deserve to have it thrust on the front page, their misery and their torture thrust on the front page of every media outlet because we let it happen and we didn't say anything, and we told all these people they were racist and they were thugs and they were fucking stupid. We told them that they were lesser than people. We fought against them. We passed laws against them. We made it harder for them to live. And now we reap the rewards of our own efforts. We reap what we sow. And what we sowed was death and destruction. Death and destruction. Where are we now? Well, they're going to use that Section 8 housing stuff to come into your neighborhood. Or they will break into your homes at the dead of night, and they will steal your children, if they don't just rape and murder them there. And they'll murder them wherever. Horribly, horribly mutilate them. With whatever glass or dull knives, and, horribly sodomize them, just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you were nice to them. Doesn't matter if you were a good person, if you were understanding. They don't care. They've been bred to hate you. And that's what they're going to do. Until we come together and we get past this and we realize that whatever we must go through to survive is worth going through. Whatever tortures they are going to do to us are worth enduring. Whatever awfulness we must endure, which originally that was what I was talking about, right? We are slated to go through this. It's unstoppable. It's here. And all we can do is come together in very small groups, right? Because we don't have the leverage. We don't have the organization to come together as a large group. And all we can do is come together as small groups and say, we're going to come together as a team, and we're going to watch out for each other. We're going to try really hard to make sure that, we make it through this period, that we have a little bitty safe haven that we can raise our children, that we can teach them the ways that our parents taught us that were wrong. We can teach them the right ways, I guess. So we can correct, these decades and decades and decades of errors. Because we have to, or our entire civilization dies. And think about what that means, right? It's not some romantic, the light goes out and the sad song plays. Nope. Eventually it's you. It's your loved ones first, right? Because you can't protect them. But eventually, in your old age, they beat you to death in a nursing home because they can't, and they won't go to jail. That's if you make it that long, right? That's if you make it that long. And they won't go to jail. Nothing will happen. There won't even be jails. There won't even be jails. We are facing the crisis of 1,000 generations. And we, as we talked about, we deserve it because we cling so tightly. And I am guilty of this. I am not calling anybody out. I am guilty of this as much as anybody. We cling so tightly to our secular and worldly pleasures, our houses, our jobs, our toys. We cling so tightly that we are unwilling to do what is necessary to protect our loved ones. This sense of temporary self-preservation will be our downfall. And eventually we'll work through it. It's inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable. We'll get through this. But it will be very, very tough. It will be very, very brutal. And we need to take the time right now to prepare ourselves. And that's the point of this podcast. So thank you very much. I'm your host. I'll return eventually. Goodbye.